this point, there is no really authentic way for us to say who or what to look for and guard yourself against. Misshapen monsters. Reaction of law enforcement officials is one of complete bewilderment at this hour. So far, we have been unable to determine that any kind of organized investigation is yet underway. Police, sheriff deputies, and emergency ambulances are literally deluged with calls for help. The scene can best be described as mayhem. Mayors of Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Miami, along with the governors of several eastern and midwestern states, have indicated the National Guard may be mobilized at any moment, but that has not happened as yet. The only advice our reporters have been able to get from official sources is for private citizens to stay in their homes behind locked doors.
You got to stay in your homes behind locked doors. Was what they're saying. Now, I don't know if that was particularly louder than some of the other ones.
Scream.
Yeah. I spent a little time yesterday trying to, I was going to record it. I was going to do another song, the musician that I am. And probably within the midst of that, I may have mucked up my audio, it was kind of like, this is this ongoing theme for those, who've never, don't know what's going on.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
What happened? Nothing happened. There we go. Be afraid, be very afraid. Actually, the title card for today is something a little bit different. It's Fender's twin reverb amp. I remember the first time I played one of those. My cousin had a band. He was older than I was. Like much old. Well, not much older, but like, I don't know. He was already out of school. I was still in school type of thing. And he had a band and they were out playing. They had a band that had gigs. They even had a record. Right. It didn't do any, it didn't like go really anywhere, but, and I remember the name. It was called I Saw You. It was something like, I saw you outside my window. I don't think he watches this show, but yeah, he was a very talented guitar player and a good singer. And he gave me guitar lessons in the basement of his house because we used to, my uncle, where he lived, they lived like, I don't know, just several blocks away from our house when I was growing up. The good old days, when families, and extended families kind of were in the same town and lived together and got together on weekends and family reunions and all that kind of jazz. But I remember he let me borrow this. I had a gig. He had a bunch of amps. And he let me borrow his twin reverb. I needed it. Twin reverb had a thing on the back of it that you allowed you to tilt it. It was much like this thing, almost like this thing on here. You see that thing here that allows you to tilt the radio upwards. This is an old transistor radio, which is good for the explanation of this. So you could like face it up. It's kind of neat. But that amp produced some really nice sounds, and it was good enough for there was some small gig we were playing, eighth grade dance of some kind, and it was like a smaller room. I didn't need much more power than that. Well, it was, there's two, I think there were 12-inch speakers, two 12-inch speakers in there. But and then you could always hook up, a mic to the PA system to your amps. and throw that into the mix if need be. Of course, we had something called a bogan. So if you were a musician back in the day, so to speak, you might know what a bogan PA was. It was hardly a thing you would use as a band for vocals. I mean, it was like more like something they would use for a PA system. I mean, like a PA system at like a public swimming pool or at a, some hall. But it was all we could get, Our entire band used to fit our equipment in a friend of mine, he's no longer with us, into his little Corvair, little white Corvair. Like, we were like a Grand Funk Railroad type of band who used to play like Chicago. Figure that out. But I mean, we played rock. We played Smoke on the Water and that kind of stuff too. But we used to fit all our stuff, including the drum set and the three of us, in this little Corvair of Mike. Mike Delaney was his name. Passed on several years back. Great guy. Anyway, ROCKFLUX. Yeah, so I was I have this program called Logic Pro, which is like an advanced version, an official version of, it's GarageBand, taken up to the next level, which I have to thank my friend Tattoo for getting that program, Logic Pro. All these thank yous. Well, anyway, all these thank yous are useless because the original plan yesterday was to grab my electric guitar, which is over there, and I was going to set, because there's like a mock reverb, twin reverb setting on there. They have amps, of course, probably for copyright reasons or patented reasons or whatever the heck it is. They don't call it twin reverb, but they call it something reverb, whatever. But it's a twin reverb, sound and settings. And you can even bring up like the amp, like an image of like kind of what the top of the amp controls are in this Logic Pro. I think you might be able to do that in GarageBand too. But I mean, Logic Pro is the stuff. But recently, during the interim, let's see how this coffee does with my tooth. It's not super hot. I thought it would be hotter. I added some 70% cacao in with the coffee grains to go through, which I hope that doesn't mess up my coffee machine, but it's a $9.95 Walmart thing, so I don't know. I think it's more likely to end up putting some kind of thing on the bottom of the carafe more so than anything else. But there wasn't that much of it. I just thought I'd give it a shot. I put in one of those delivery orders yesterday. That same thing happened again. I had like this double chat rate of 2. And excuse me, I don't know what that was. By the way, it's 5:42 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I believe. 8 Daylight Time on October 24th, 2021, and it's a Sunday. So, if I haven't said it already to you, good morning. Welcome to the show. So I was going to record, like I said, my approach for recording songs, for writing and recording songs is pretty much I just make it this. Usually, I mean, the normal procedure is that I just say to myself, let's write a song, and so I thought, what the heck? I mean, there was nothing going on. So it's a rainy day. 'Twas a rainy day. And why the hell not? And so that was it. That was the plan. I'm moving my ROCKFLUX thing down a little bit so we can see our critters. Or maybe I should enlarge the ROCKFLUX thing. Maybe that's a secret. I remember yesterday we were playing around with the lava lamp, and it took the longest time for me to discover that the lava lamp was actually locked in place. So now we'll relock it in place and we get it to work again. And this way you can see the fellas. Right. We can see you now, fellas. And you're not locked in place, so we can ROCKFLUX a little bit bigger. Anyway, hopefully these things aren't like hugging the edge of your screen. I noticed on my TV screen that happens. In any event, I couldn't get the monitor because they've redesigned. There was an update. You get these updates. Logic Pro's update. You're on a Mac at least. I'm sure it happens on Windows too. And so in your settings thing, there's this little red thing, and it's like you click on it. It's like Logic Pro update. And I'm going, fine, Logic Pro, that's fine as long as, it's not, and I think there might have been one or two since the last time I wrote my last song. The last song I wrote was called I believe was My Last Girlfriend. It was either that or Virtual Cage, which is a great hit, and you ought to get a copy of Virtual Cage. Anyway, both of those songs were about a year ago. It's the last time I really wrote a song. I've written 50 beat poetry songs. If you get my 8th book, there's basically the lyrics to all 50 in there. In fact, as I mentioned before, apart from a couple of little essay type of things, book 8, the 8th book, the infinity book, so to speak, is primarily just a lyric book. It like could be a poetry thing. He's a poetry man. Right? Good God. Minnie Riperton, maybe that was. I don't know. I forget. I have no idea.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
I'm doing it. We're doing it. Yeah. So I set up the twin reverb amp, virtual twin reverb amp, and got the microphone and the board. And that's why my settings might be a little bit off. I have no idea because I'm listening to these phones are hooked into the mixer. And the reason that's so when I do this, I can hear it, I can cue it up, I could do that kind of thing. And it's also got my voice in here. And if I'm doing also primarily, I'm not doing it today, and I have the things on the other side of the room. But I have the ability to take phone calls, and so I can feed the voice. It's a complicated. I figured it out. I was impressed with myself when it worked. And I've done it. You could go back. There's like 2 interviews with Tattoo on the phone that I've done. And I'm able to hear them from the phone in my headphones. I'm able to use this microphone to talk to them. They can hear me. And then their voice is coming through the mixer, which it's, and I could control the volume level on that. So anyway, that's the whole reason why I'm kind of trapped on the side of the audio computer, which is a separate computer. It's an old G5. So I don't have I tried to explain this once before. So I don't hear the mix, the output, the final output. I mean, I hear the mix, but I hear the mix I'm making. I don't hear what you're hearing. So that's why sometimes if I put a video on, which I may still have, I don't know if I still have this. I might have ditched it. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have it there anymore. But if I do decide to put a video up, what happens is I can't hear the audio of that video. So, like, just for the sake of doing it, media source. We'll just call it media source. And let's see what I got here. Because I probably have a couple of things. It's not under that category. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, there was a couple of them. But this one, we've done this before, and it's fun. So let's just
People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise. People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise. People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise.
And actually, nothing's ever been truer. Yeah, people are in for a big surprise. So I couldn't hear, but I know, as a matter of fact, I know, I've heard that. I know that there is audio on there, but I can't hear that. So I'm just hoping that in my messing around yesterday, so I ended up not writing a song. Because I told you, my whole process is I kind of drape the guitar over me, set up the sound, choose my amp. I was going to do this twin reverb. That was my inspiration. And I was going to get back and I was going to write a song, and it was probably going to be that twin reverb era type of tune. I did have some ideas for some lyrics. They escape me now, but they were contemporary things, dealing with, I don't know, might have been the saline solution. That might have been the title of the song. Saline. It's a saline solution. The saline solution. I should probably write that down now that I remembered it. Maybe I will, if I could get the thing working. Or I might just have to go back to GarageBand, which I'd hate to do because Logic Pro is such a superior program, literally. And the output quality, when you bounce it, you do your mix, you have much better, the end product is like mastered. As close to being mastered as possible. Song, the saline solution. I had a toothache last night. I ordered some stuff yesterday, and
you're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I guess we're in a little babble before we get into the show, so keep the twin reverb up in case people tune in for that and understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, so I ordered some stuff from like this Instacart delivery place. And it was good stuff. I mean, healthy food, but like some healthy snack food because I didn't have anything to snack on. And I have you see my teeth are decent, pretty white. You know what I mean? I have a decent smile, I think, right? I brush my teeth and stuff like that. And, but on the side, I have two bad teeth, and this will gross some people out. And I have two of these, but I'll show you one. You see that piece of metal? That came out of my tooth. That's from childhood, when they used to put metal fillings in your teeth. And one came off from over here, and one over here. And this is an ongoing saga, and it's been mentioned many times on this show. There's a dentist up the street, but we're not taking any new patients. You know, and then my other dentist, who was my dentist, who I had ended up getting a tooth yanked the last time. Right? I'm like, what the heck? I don't, take the tooth out at this point. It's in pain, right? He doesn't do. That's all he does. He's an oral surgeon now. That's his thing. I guess there's more money in oral surgery, and he doesn't want to mess around with fillings and stuff like that. So, my old dentist became an oral surgeon exclusively. The dentist up the road isn't taking new customers, whatever, patients. And, and I don't know any other, I think I called somewhere else and it was some song and dance. Well, first you come in for a cleaning, then we'll give you an x-ray, and then you come back for another appointment, and then we'll decide what we're going to do. I'm like, that's why I ended up having the tooth yanked. I mean, I don't need a cleaning. A teeth cleaning. My teeth are white. Okay? You're just trying to overcharge me. I mean, the gall. I mean, this is what I say about people today, particularly the media and politicians, but it's like right down to the businesses. So it's the whole corporatocracy. They don't even realize what's coming out of their mouths. It's like the saline solution, which we've been talking about, and I'll write a song about it, I think, one way or another. But it's the idea that they hear what they're saying. In other words, basically what she's saying is, well, we want to charge like an extra $100 for a cleaning or something. It's like, I don't want a cleaning. You have to have the cleaning. What do you mean I have to have the cleaning? And then they want to take an x-ray. And I'm going like, look, I'm a cancer survivor. I got so much radiation in me, man. I want to live a decent life. I want some more life expectancy. I don't want to keep getting dosed, And besides, I've gone to dentists over the years and they poke around, like I said this once before. They poke around a little bit with that little, pointy thing and the other thing with the mirror on it, and it's like they hit a sensitive spot. Yeah, that's the spot. Or sometimes they'll just scrape some discolorization off and say, okay, that's okay. Because what people don't know, enamel does heal. Your teeth do some healing. It's like a little secret they keep away from you. They don't let you know that. A tooth will heal over if it's a minor, abrasion or something like that. But then if they find a spot, that's a cavity, they usually drill it out, right? And, and there you go. But I mean, come on, man. This is crazy. So, I don't know what to do. It's like I can't eat. So I guess that thing that just popped up. Let's get rid of the daily photo. And I have this under news. This is my news. And this is sideways for some reason, but I figured there's no reason to flip it around. So I got some low-fat ice cream. I usually get like frozen yogurt. The stuff that has the culture in it is like frozen yogurt. So it's like semi-healthy for you, good for your gut, right? It's yogurt. And this stuff on the top is flax meal, which is like good in the omegas, right? I put that on my oatmeal today. I had soft oatmeal with blueberries. And those little treat things on the top are pomegranates covered with dark chocolate, which is also good for the heart. It's healthy. Dark chocolate's healthy. Pomegranates are healthy. So it's just low fat. It felt like a little treat. And I don't know if it was that, that did it, or I had another little healthy snack yesterday. I don't know why I'm spinning. Hopefully the signal didn't get disrupted. But, you know, I had some spinach and artichoke dip on some healthy pita chips. But it's like I can't eat anything that I have to chew now, almost. So I ended up taking like an 800 milligram Motrin, 2 of them, one to go to bed and one in the middle of the night. And I could almost feel like it might be wearing off. And it's a Sunday. Things like this always happen on a Sunday, a Saturday or a Sunday, when you couldn't go to a dentist if you wanted to, assuming they would emergency take you in. So anyway, that's that. So let's just put the twin reverb aside for a second, and let's get into the weekend weather. And here's a view of the former United States. And I don't know, for those of you, if there's anyone who follows me every day, I doubt that. But I've just noticed, it's blatantly obvious. Over the past week or so, you know, we went from where the U.S. was just about cloud-free, and I was talking about starry, starry nights and stuff like that, to where right now it looks like the only places are like the Carolinas, Georgia, and maybe getting over into, you know, Louisiana and that state next to. Sorry about that. Is that state next to Louisiana? Geography. I know I don't have any listeners from over there. It just like slipped my mind. Make me feel like an illiterate. So anyway, yeah, the southeast, except for Florida, put it that way. But yeah, the north, it's like going to be rainy and all those clouds. And look at the diversity of clouds. You know, that's another weird thing about it. You know, like especially on the northern tier of the country. You know how different they all are? It's pretty weird. Well, anyway, it just spells rain. It's going to be cold. We're definitely into fall now. Everywhere you see those clouds practically, it's fall. People down south, they're like growing stuff. You know, I heard one guy talking, you know, about planning and, you know, getting an 80-degree weather or something. I don't know. But, yeah, that whole, from the mid-Atlantic up through the Northeast, the plains and the Northwest, it's like, it's fall. Harvest time and all that jazz. Weekend weather. Of course, I didn't check my own, which I should have. I usually tell you what's going on here.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Well, in my neck of the woods, today, Sunday, it's 100% chance of rain. 100%. This is the guy with the roof. Monday, 60%, Tuesday, 70%, and then rain, you know, clouds, probably rain Wednesday and Thursday. And it's going to be either just around 50 or in the mid 40s at night. So it's like cold. And it's like I always say, you know, it's like it's this whole thing about, you know, the sun gives us warmth, heat, vitamin D, and all that stuff, and controls the climate. And it's like, I listen to NOAA weather radio. And in fact, this Earth View map, this is NOAA. This is the CONUS satellite, I guess low Earth orbit. This thing literally was just taken a few hours ago. So this is what it really looks like when I show you these things. So it's like I'm a daily weather person. And in the summertime, I'm really into it because I do the gardening thing. And so I'm constantly want to know if it's whether I have to water or not. I'm monitoring precipitation, heat indexes, all that kind of stuff, and records, an almanac type of stuff. And even now I'll listen to NOAA weather radio, which I have upstairs. And in the course of them going through, this whole litany of things that they do, right, which repeat every, I don't know how many, every 10 or 15 minutes, unless there's a storm, when they go start giving you the live storm coverage or something, emergency stuff. But otherwise, it's just basically the weather, the forecast, the extended forecasts. But they also deal with the record highs, record lows, and things like that. And I can't tell you how much and how many times I listen to this, and it's, they're saying, they'll talk about the hottest day, the record. Well, the hottest day on record was 57, or was in 48, or was in 32, 1932, or was back in 1966. And yet I still see this news stuff daily where the planet's heating up, climate crisis, Watch yesterday's show where I break down the atmosphere and try to explain that this is actually a nitrogen planet, and that even the official, even if you go on to Google and you go to official sources, they don't even list the percentage of CO2. They put that under it's like nitrogen, 70-some% nitrogen, 20-some% oxygen, 0.09% argon. Right? And then they go, and other trace elements. In other words, CO2 is so low, it's a trace element. And they're trying to make this out to be the boogeyman. And I'm telling you, if you ask a college student, on the street kid, or adult, right? And say, what's the predominant gas, they might say oxygen, which would be way off, by over 3 times off. But they're not going to say nitrogen. And some people are going to say, I'd say more than likely they're going to say CO2. They have no idea. It's a trace element. It still makes the planet green and gives us crops and helps give us the oxygen that we breathe. I know, I sound like a broken record, which is no better way to segue into the music feature of the day. Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. This is an album that is an amazing album. And if you bought the original record, and I guess the digital one comes with it, there was I guess at the last minute, they had so much music that they included a 45 in there that had the song called Saturn on it, which I could see why they added that into the mix, put it in the package, because Saturn is a great song. It's kind of an unknown Stevie Wonder song, Saturn. Anyway, going back to Saturn where the rings all glow, rainbow moonbeams and orange snow. That's the song called Saturn. Some of my favorite songs on this are a song called Always and If, right? The songs that got played were songs like Sir Duke and stuff like that, which I thought were I don't know, they weren't the greatest. But I think the reason songs like Sir Duke, which was basically a tribute to Duke Ellington, were probably pushed because of the amount of people that participated in the production of this album. The musicians is a who's who. I mean, And it was just, these sessions were incredible sessions. And it's just, and who knows even if they've got listed everybody who's even was on there. I'm sure there's a few surprises. It might not have been gotten their record because of record company contracts, might not been able to have been listed, but probably were sitting in. It's a great album. You better have a very long project if you were going to listen to this from beginning to end, because it's a several disc set plus that extra. But it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. And it's a throwback, to a time, the whole total different time, And yeah, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder. Great record, highly recommended. If you're looking for to discover something new, or if you're somebody who kind of remembers a couple of tunes, this isn't My Cherie or more or that kind of stuff. Okay, this is Stevie Wonder, grown up. The man, the musician, the songwriter, and incredible sessions on a multi-platter, set, and won't let down. Like I say, there's like maybe one or two tracks on there that are just so. But generally speaking, especially in the digital age, you could just, skip them if you don't like it. But there's some songs in there that'll get you, that really are the stuff. Songs in the Key of Life. Recommended. So, man. Ice cream. You feel my tooth bothering me. It's like I'm almost at the point where probably like Monday I might just end up calling that like oral surgeon and have him yank it. I don't know how many teeth you need to be able to properly chew. I mean, all the front ones still look pretty darn healthy and white and clean, and I don't know. And I still got my back teeth. This is just like kind of in the middle here, and there's one over here that, it's pretty crazy.
Your papers, please.
So yeah, twin reverb, and there's so much about that just takes, for musicians, it's and it has a special meaning. But even for non-musicians, just looking at, at the design, you could call it the industrial design, but it's like, it just spells rock and roll, So I just plastered ROCKFLUX on there. Use it as the title card. And to this day, they still make these. They're just, the original ones had tubes in them. That's how old this is. But, yeah, they have solid state versions of them now. And like I say, there's digital, I guess digital copies of sorts available as well. But it's just that culture that's like, it's just a throwback to remind you how times have changed so very much. People don't know what they're missing. That's the one thing recurring theme when I talk to people. Anybody over a certain age. It's like weird.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. Little tooth activity, but, reminiscent about the twin reverb amp. Fender twin reverb amp. There was even a smell that they had, you know? It's like it you know, and it wasn't a bad, I mean, you know, yeah, nothing like it, man. Classic. So anyway, back to this. We're 1 week away now from Halloween, which has become such a major U.S. holiday over the past, I guess, several decades, mainly because of the candy industry, right? Consumerism. Can't really taste that chocolate. I mean, maybe a tad. It might have like mellowed out slightly the coffee. Hard to say. Famous white handkerchief. Keep the coffee off the mustache. So anyway, yeah, I lowered the volume here just a tad on my I'm upping it right now because yesterday I was fiddling around. I'm like Fiddler on the Roof. I was Fiddler on the Roof last week when I was trying to fix my roof from leaking. Now I'm like Fiddler. I was fiddling on the with the wires here trying to get a sound. Very frustrating. You know, again, this 2021 thing, you know, in these computers. And this is a clear instance. This had nothing really to do with the machine, the unit that I was using at all. Just this idea of these various upgrades, justifications, or I don't know what the purpose is. It's like, you know, to create bloatware so that people have to buy more powerful systems, or that, you know, or who knows. But I mean, I'm computer literate. I've produced 50 different songs on this, well, on this and other machines, and I've used that program and other programs, and I could not get a monitor out, you know, playback. I mean, if you can't, so it was like, and in this instance, it's not like right now where I have the mic in the mixer. I actually have an output, you know, coming out of the, you know, and I was able to hear, like, they have some, you know, built-in things, because some people just use samples and different things like that, or loops, they call them. And the loops were coming out. You know, that's how the volume, that's why I think I might have messed up my volumes, because, you know, I was upping the volume and stuff thinking, well, maybe this, that, the other. But I was able to hear the loops that the program was producing. So it wasn't an audio problem, you know, an audio output problem. It's just something inside of it. I spent about an hour or so doing it, and then it just took the wind out of my sails, and, you know, I was hardly going to be in the mood to be writing a song, right? Lyrics, music, you know, and then performance and all that kind of stuff. By that point, I looked up at the clock, and I'm like, where'd the day go? You know, I'm getting tired. And then I had this stuff I had ordered, and that showed up, and putting that stuff away, and that was the end of it. So, you know, it's just another example of, like, this 21st century technology just being, like, as I say, half-assed. just half-assed. I mean, sure, you can sit there and dedicate, but I mean, it's not made for the so-called Renaissance man. And I don't mean that in some kind of like egotistical way. But for people that do use their computer for multiple purposes, right? These computers were originally designed, and I know because I've been using them for 35 years. I've been using Mac computers for 35 years. I've been using personal computers because I had the Commodore. And when I was in college, like I said, my roommate was a computer science major, so I was even in the computer room. And I think I showed that thing a couple of times. I don't know if it's still laying around here or not. I don't know where it went. But I actually have a key punch card from the first, like literally not the first generation, but like the original computers. So I know computers. I know code. And, you should be able to not only multitask, but, the idea is that if I happen to, if I happen to be doing graphic design, if I happen to be creating some kind of, ledger, financial ledger, if I'm scanning something, playing back something, doing this live video broadcasting, and then, creating websites. And then I want to write a song and write and produce a song. And it's as if, they don't take that into consideration anymore. And so you have to focus and kind of really get into one thing. It shouldn't be that way. You should be able to just move from one to the other. You used to be able to. That was the whole idea of apps. Right? Okay, I want to make a PowerPoint presentation or a keynote, whatever you want to call it. Click on it, make it. I'm done, save, quit. Now I want to make a movie, right? Okay, click the movie, iMovie, Final Cut Pro, make the movie, export it, whatever. Done. Now I want to type a letter, right? Now I check my email. Now I want to browse the internet. That's the whole idea of apps. So I go to this app, and it's not functioning, or the whole. In other words, they originally did this with iMovie years and years and years ago. I talked about this a long time ago. iMovie, when it first came out, when Steve Jobs first was involved in overseeing these things, because he wasn't a programmer. Wozniak did everything, but then eventually the Apple team did all of this, next generation stuff. But he was the guy, and however people wanted to call him a prick and all this kind of stuff because he pushed people to the limit and he freaked out on them and whatever. Sometimes that's what you need in somebody when you're pushing a team to do something, do the impossible, or what they think is impossible. But whatever the case may be, under his stewardship, put it that way, right? Forget everything. Under his stewardship, his leadership, so to speak, iMovie came out. And it was this program that you just literally dragged and dropped a clip. Or you could record yourself live right on it by just clicking the red record button. And then there was a wave editor below, so you can edit the sound. Like I said, I made music video for a band for MTV on the old iMovie. I made commercials that aired on commercial television because I was at my ad agency days. All right. I made commercials that aired on television. All right. With the old iMovie. And suddenly one day I'm watching, the Apple keynote, and some stooge comes out on stage and says, "Hey, look, this is great. You're going to love this. We've totally redesigned iMovie to make it easier and better, and they made it like a frickin' nightmare." And what it was it was a scaled down version of Final Cut Pro, which the thing is, the key word is pro. For people, again, not for the Renaissance man, but for the person that just worked in that profession. It's like I never really got into using Adobe Premiere, right? Because that wasn't my thing. I wasn't like an editor. I was a producer. I was a creative, right? And what was nice about the early days of Apple, right, and the first generation of software, was it was made for creatives. So for anyone who had creativity, that was the whole idea why they called it GarageBand and stuff. Even and the early GarageBand was better than the later GarageBand too. Was the idea this was for people who were creative to just not have to deal with bullshit and just jump right in and create, And then they complicated it and made everything so it was like just a level below their paid programs. And that's what they did with like Logic Pro now. It's like, with GarageBand, it's like Logic Pro is just, I hate the term, but it's accepted in our stupid vernacular. Logic Pro is modern GarageBand on steroids. Okay? iMovie is Final Cut Pro on steroids, kind of. And it's like, if you look at the original, and I have the original iMovie on this other machine over here, my sound effects machine. And I'm going to check while I talk to you. Let's see here. Applications. I have GarageBand on here. So, which is like only takes up 185 megabytes on this disk, right? And let's see out of curiosity what 185 megabytes. Let me look at applications. They still call it applications. Let's see what, and I'll just look at GarageBand. I'm not going to even, GarageBand it's calculating the size. On this computer, still calculating the size. Still calculating the size. Come on. Is it going to give it to me? .15 gigabytes. And let's see, Logic Pro. So this was the other one was 185. The original was 185 megabytes. And this is 1.15 gigabytes. Now let's look at Logic Pro. Calculating size. Calculating size, calculating size, calculating size. 1.97 gigabytes, so almost 2 gigabytes that program is. And yeah, modified July 14th. Created July 7th, 2021. Modified July 14th, 2021. So this summer, some clown decided to totally revamp Logic Pro. And I told you I haven't written a song in almost a year. Because I've been doing live broadcasts this entire year, and I wrote a book. Actually, I wrote 2 books within the past, if you think about it. Yeah, because I wrote a book last November, December came out, my Codex book, which is above the skull. Almost need to raise this thing a little bit so you can see the word Codex. And then I wrote my latest book, which is, I have to figure out which way to look. There. Then what? Everything's reversed on the screen. So I hadn't, I have not been doing music. I've written 2 books and have done like 300 plus television webcast videos, among other things, among other projects, graphics, and who knows what. So in July, they decided to change the program. And so I'm going to have to spend a couple hours learning this thing. Yeah, it's funny. When I started it up, it didn't even have that thing. Sometimes they have this thing. Here's what's new with Logic Pro, right? Or here's what's new with, whatever, right? When they update a program. Nothing like that popped up. It just opened up. There should have been a thing. Here's what's new. You're no longer going to be automatically be able to hear. I also noticed that if you brought in a drummer or something like that, because one of the benefits of using some of these digital recordings is that I have a MIDI keyboard down below, you can't see it, that I hook up, and I'm able to use that to play. I could set individual keys for cymbals, tom-toms, bass drums, or whatever. And some of the songs I've recorded, I've basically boom, 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 boom. I've done that. So it's entirely me. I'll play the bass. I'll set up the MIDI keyboard as a bass instrument. Right? Or even my guitar, and I'll use the last couple strings as a bass and play that bass. But there are also times where I will use a drummer, because that's what you pay, for the program for, is I will sometimes use some kind of beat, and so even that, I noticed, you usually drag the beat into a track, an instrument, more so than a beat, just an instrument or a beat. And then you can mess with it, you customize it, But there was nothing showing up. Usually there would be just a little mini bit of it. Was the basic sampled bit of it. So that's the part that you either stretched out and you edited and you messed with and you could control the cymbals and the snares and all that kind of stuff, like if it was a drum thing. And I noticed that wasn't, like, I was able to hear the sample of it, like, what it was. But when I dragged it put it into a track, there was nothing there to play. So I have no idea. Pain in my side. So, yeah, that was weird. So we're an hour into the program. We're just talking about that. But that's the whole thing. So, because it's not just, that's why I say you don't have to talk about politics, to just see how out of whack everything is. Yeah, it's just in general. So, I mean, this is just a babble about that. I realize I guess I went on too long about it. So, and maybe because I'm just in like kind of a weird mood with the tooth. I should bring that thing back, So, I don't know. This one has been.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello. Yeah. So, yeah, that's that. So that's what happened for those. This is just a Sunday blog, blog, video blog. It's going to rain all day. I really don't have anything to do. Maybe I'll I don't know. Maybe I'll mess around and try to figure out that program. But it's almost like, see, I've gotten to this point now where I really don't like I noticed on this image yesterday, I'm going to filter this. I'm going to like lighten this up even a little more. That there was on my TV, there was a slight line, like a defining line on it, which I didn't want. But what I'm saying is that, see, I'm trying very hard now. Well, not hard. I'm just making an effort. Like even with having a problem with the tooth. Is that the idea is that I don't let things upset me. I mean, I get on a rant. That's part of this show. And it's, like I say, this is just showbiz, really. I'm on camera. There's a certain type of person that does a thing like this. And, this show's a lot different than a lot of other people's shows. Do you know what I mean? Because they're like they've got the lights on them. It's daytime. They've got their desk and they're sitting there and they're reporting serious and they're really serious about this, that, the other, or they're the produced videos. But there's not a whole heck of a lot of people who have this like variety show, right? I mean, this is like
quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
You never know what to expect here. And the type of information that's imparted to you sometimes is just so outrageous. And stuff you've never even heard before. But but anyway, all that said is the idea is that I try not to get anything, like even when the roof was leaking, right? Because a few people I do talk to, I don't talk to that many people anymore. like, somebody called yesterday. Well, how's the roof? Like concern. And I'm like, it's fine. I don't know. I was up a little while ago. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't let myself, things bother me because I'm a human being. So it's like, it's part of our nature to have these, pressure points, I guess, whatever, things that, but it's like, I just like, I'm like, it's not worth worrying about, It's like you just get rid of it. I think that's why I was able to get rid of, like, just stop tweeting and just, cancel my TV service and get out of, like, I don't watch the news and stuff. I mean, I keep my eyes out I know what's going on in the world. I'm not like, burying my head in the sand. But I don't really let things bother me. So it's even this Logic Pro thing I'm talking about, It's not like, and so I'm almost at the point where I'm trying to get at is that I just don't know if I want to be, I wonder if I guess that wasn't probably the best. The afraid isn't too visible. The skull, maybe that's a good enough spot for it. I don't know. I know there's probably depending on your contrast setting on your screen, you got one of these like billion pixel things or on a TV set a certain way, you'll see a square, like like kind of a light square around that. The way my monitor's set is it's invisible. And it's possible for me to recreate that thing like I have these things up top that there's basically nothing behind them. In other words, they're just like PNG files or GIF files, as I call them. But what I'm saying to finish that trend of thought, it's like, what's the McCartney line? What's the use of worrying? Right? And I always tell people that when somebody has a problem. I'm always like, well, when is this thing? Like they're worried about something they got to do in a couple of weeks or next week or something like that. I said, well, it's not tomorrow or this afternoon, right? Like, yeah, it's not till next Thursday or something. And I say, well, why are you worrying now? Right? For something that's like not happening, it's like, it just doesn't make sense. And then when time comes, you just deal with it. And it's like, but, and even beyond that point, but in general, why worry? Or put yourself in a situation, it's a frustrating situation intentionally. In other words, you're diving into a situation that, I'm just realizing that fresh mint, what's the difference between fresh mint and sweet mint? I get into this. I've been using these Mentos things because they have xylitol in them, which is supposedly good for your teeth, which I think is the only reason I got this far. And people who've watched these videos like 6 months ago, my teeth, see, I'm back. This thing that's acting up now was like, went into remission, so to speak, for 6 months. So it's like, yeah. So that's frustrating. That's frustrating. But I'm not worried about it. It's frustrating. But like I say, why should I, with this Logic Pro, it's like, yeah, it's going to rain today, 100% chance of rain. That means I'm not going out of the house. There's nothing I can do anywhere, right? I'm not going to just sit around and binge watch TV, right? So I got to do something, I'm not going to clean the downstairs. Like I've been wanting to do this Swiffer mopping of all these floors down here, but I'm still waiting for this. The guy to fix the gas furnace hasn't shown yet. And he better be showing like Monday or Tuesday at the latest. And that's down in the basement, which the floor down there is like, it's a basement. It's just dirty. And, this workman comes in with these work shoes and tracks dirt in and tracks dirt all out through the kitchen, in through this room to the front door. And so I'm waiting on mopping and cleaning up the floors, because till after this guy, tracks like Pigpen from Snoopy, this wherever that is. I have that thing somewhere, don't I? A goofy thing. Yeah.
Pieces out of his pumpkin patch and fly through the air with this bag of toys for all the children.
So I'll wait till Pigpen gets through before I mop the floor. So I'm not going to clean. I did laundry, so I don't really have to do laundry. So it would be the ideal day to just dig in and like do this. Right? But if I'm going to be putting myself into this, it's like forcing yourself into a position of frustration. And I don't know if I want to do that. Why get yourself frustrated? Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know tomorrow, I guess. That's the whole thing. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I glanced at the news, like the Google News, like what they're calling Google News, and it's just insanity. Ridiculousness. It's like they replace one story with another story. Like they have these, I don't know if you've noticed this. You have to have been in media, I think, sometimes maybe to understand how these people work. The editorial staffs of whether it's TV stations or print or whatever, or new so-called new media, online media, whatever. They always want to have a story about a certain thing, right? And, they have correspondence, obviously, So you have the White House press corps, so you get your White House person. So it's like, okay, what's the guy, doing? And so there was something to the effect of like Biden has taken more time off than Trump did in the same time period, right? Which is no surprise because Biden, disappears. When he's not plugged up, dopamined up, or whatever the heck they're giving him, yeah, he's basically in some oxygen, room, like in that movie Beam there, right? He's like some room pump where oxygen's being pumped in and he's getting some kind of transfusion and whatever 21st century drugs that we're not even aware exist, he's getting them. I still say they're eventually going to wear off, though. That'll be like that movie Awakenings I was talking to somebody on the phone about. Eventually, remember that movie Awakenings? Like these people were like frozen like this for like 20 years. And then Robin Williams' character, they started giving him like cocaine, really, is what it was. And then suddenly the next day they were animated, and it was like they had no idea that for 20 years they were frozen. And now they're men or women, and they were, girls and boys before they froze. And then eventually they just couldn't give them enough of a dose of this stuff to keep the brain activity going, and they went back to freezing up in space in place. Well, it seems to me that unless there's been some major breakthrough, I think the same's going to eventually happen with Biden. Sometime in the next, I don't know, it might take as long as 6 months, could be just several months. But sooner or later, he's going to come out on stage and he's just going to be like, the thing, and it's going to be, and there'll be and they'll like pull him off. Two people will like escort him off the stage. Export, I was going to say. I don't know why. I'm losing my mind. But anyway, so they have the White House correspondent. So it's like follow Joe, right? And then they always want to have some human interest, but morbid human interest story. So they've replaced this woman that had disappeared and was killed, and this guy that looks to me like it was a whole setup, probably some serial killer or set this guy up and is probably still out at large. And replaced that with some kid story, got killed or disappeared and got killed. I mean, this is morbid, but I mean, this is the news media. That's what they're about. Think about it. Think of TV in general, right? The popular shows. They're all about trauma and horror, right? Cop shows, hospital shows, right? Firemen. I mean, they try to show the human side and the little love things going on the side, put in their little ideologies, right? This certain, their philosophy of, as if everyone in the world is I don't even want to get into it, but you know what I'm saying? It's like every show you've got like three or four types of characters are the predominant characters, as if the entire world is that, is of that preference of sorts. But it's like, okay, so what? I don't watch them anyway, but I mean, I'm aware of it because you see the trailer, the coming attraction or whatever. But I mean, so you got that demented story. And then you have these pretend stories of like, as if there's justice for congressmen or somebody like that who've like cheated. So they bring it, give a little publicity to it. And then that like makes it look like, oh yeah, see, there's justice. But then it just vanishes and nothing ever happens to those people. So that's all just like a game they play. That's a media game, corporatocracy game. And the list goes on, right? Then there's some talk about technology, right? Like this thing is going to save the world type of thing. But they leave out the idea that it's never going to be available for the average person. Only for billionaires only need apply, right? And then, of course, the thing, right, that's been going on forever. Then they've got to have the story about that. And so you look down the list, and it's like it's the same thing, and every week. Bitcoin's up to 61, back up to 61,000 today, I noticed. And I caught some story where Bitcoin now is going to have its Netscape moment. All right. This is really weird. I could show you this story, but it's so bizarre. And so what they were trying to say is that in 94, when Netscape came out, the internet, though it had been around for a long time, the browser, suddenly the common person had a way of browsing, right? And then that opened the doors and, and it's somewhat true, though there were other ways of doing it and getting on, and Apple and Microsoft, had, there were ways where you could, it wasn't like the internet was there, but you can access the internet, put it that way. But anyway, yeah, Netscape was Netscape. I had Netscape. Netscape had an interesting thing because they had a communicator, like that they had a web, you could build a website through, it was one program. And again, like I showed you before, it was a tiny program that ran on an old computer that had like 20 megabytes of RAM, or storage, not even RAM. I mean, that's another thing people just don't even question. Like the stuff we used to do on these computers that had very little memory, very little processing power, and very little RAM, right? But if you knew what you were doing, and if you created your web pages, like most of the graphics I was creating were in K, were like 12K would be like I would never I would try to keep my graphics below 15K tops, right? And that included animations, things that were animated, so that people could browse and go to it and see images and stuff and be right there, right on it, And the same, like the computers, the software was basically contoured to a machine that had X amount of memory and processing power. And like I said, we did amazing things. I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, I remember, if I got this correct, might have been Musician Magazine or something like that. I'm just talking. I'm not sure if that was it or not. But I remember, because I was involved with a high-end graphics studio out in L.A. in Wilshire Boulevard. And I remember, I think it was Musician. It was one of those magazines came in, and they wanted to go digital. And so they came to us to do, to create the issue digitally for them. But it was clear they wanted to do it themselves after that. But they wanted, people who knew how to do that stuff. And that's what we did. We were like, because we were doing all kinds of stuff. We had like the best Macs. We had big monitors. That stuff was really expensive back then. And we also had the output devices that output what they called like 1200 DPI, 2400 DPI, the stuff you had to actually process through this paper, photosensitive type of film paper. And well, actually, you could actually create negative graphics for plate, and that could be used for offset plates. And this is over the head of some people, I understand. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that's like almost 30 years ago. In fact, it is like 30 years ago, right? 91 would be 30 years ago. And if you would, the Mac computers at that time, right? The idea that you could produce a magazine, print ready, a glossy magazine. And we had a print shop attached to us. And so we did our own printing and stuff like that too. But the idea that we were able to do that 30 years ago. And so now you have these machines, and that's why I say it's bloatware. And people say, yeah, but you couldn't. And I'm like, couldn't what? It was a magazine. So anything you see in a magazine, we were doing 30 years ago. And as far as websites were concerned, it was just code. You just had to be a good code writer, that's all. And you had to know how to use, programs like Photoshop or whatever you were using, or there was like GIFmation. There were different little programs around. So you knew how to shrink down the size of something. Take out unnecessary, things to reduce the file size. That's that's all bloatware is. Bloatware is just all this extra stuff. It's just unnecessary, right? And they talk about the GUI. And so when you look at stuff today, it's like the graphic user interface is like what the primary focus is, and that's kind of like their bloatware. But even that's not, I don't buy into that completely, because I was designing websites 25 years ago that were pretty frickin' elaborate, and I was broadcasting, webcasting. That VU meter here on the bottom of my screen, right? It stopped, but it'll start. This thing right here. That is something that I've had for 25 years. And it actually worked faster and better 25 years ago. It used to move a lot. It wasn't so slow like that. It was more realistic. It would really look like it was responding to my voice. So, what are they doing? So the whole idea then, and that was, and then that it just got worse and worse and worse. But it really didn't get worse until the 2000s. The 90s were the golden years of the internet and the golden years of computing. The late 90s, the Macs were almost at their best. When OS 9.2 finally was released. That's a flawless program, or OS. That's the one I'm using on this computer here, right? That I do this stuff with,
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
And I have all kinds of software programs on there that I use. I do use graphics programs on there as well. And that is, that was the heyday of everything. So you could make movies, you could webcast, you could make videos, you could use Photoshop, you could browse the internet. In fact, Mac at those days, I'm a Mac person, was tied in because Bill Gates had bought 50,000 shares or invested 50, I don't know if he invested 50 grand. I think he bought 50,000 shares or invested 50 million into Apple in the early, right around 2000, sometime in that era. So Apple was carrying Office, Microsoft Office. So I was using, rather than using Apple's email, I was using Outlook Express, Microsoft Outlook Express, which I liked a lot better than in fact, to this day, I wished, but then they discontinued it because Apple became Apple only type of stuff. and Microsoft stuff won't work here. And then Apple basically copied everything. Keynote is every program, Numbers, Pages is their version of Word. Keynote is their version of PowerPoint. They just, and I don't know how they did that, what they did. I guess there was no lawsuit, or there could have been, or maybe there was a settlement. But considering that at that point, when Gates invested in Apple, it was $10 a share. And then at one point it shot up to like 3 or 6, whatever. And then they split the stock at some point. But the amount of money you could have made on Apple stock in 1999, 2000, like even though the .com crash thing or whatever, it didn't matter. If you would have bought Apple stock and held on to it, through that thing, you'd have made you're instant millionaire if just a common man. If you just put, if you had like 10,000, it's like, because I know I did at one point. I don't anymore. I only have one credit card, and I don't have a big balance on it because I don't have a need for it. But at one point, I had $10,000 balance on my credit card, and stuff like that. Or an American Express was unlimited if you paid it off. But they also had a financing program too. Like, I forget what that was called. And what I'm saying is that, even if you just borrowed, and of course in the stock market, you don't have to have the full amount to buy, you only lose if the stock goes down, because then you get called, then, and so you have to pay. But in the case of Apple, yeah, if you would have bought Apple at $10 a share, and spent $10,000, you'd have you'd have been a millionaire, more or less, instantly. So wouldn't have, you pay your interest in your loan, you still, But somebody like who put 50 million in or something like that, or bought 50,000 shares, whatever, I don't know, whatever it was. Microsoft did something like that. It's either 50,000 shares or $50 million. I don't know, either way. So, they had a vested interest in Apple doing well. So what would they care if Apple, I guess Apple was selling software because they were, they were making, hundreds of millions of dollars on the success of Apple. But be that as it may, it's a long way to get around this idea of bloatware, and really comes in with what I was really talking about, not the ice cream, but is this Fender, thing, analog, the original analog. I could bring that up so it's not like dealing with and you can see a little bit of a guitar under there, which makes it even better. But the concept is that, so follow me on the thinking here. So you had the Fender Twin Reverb amp, and I was a musician when I was in like grade school, in a band, musician, rock band. And these were tube amps. And it was what you would call analog. It was wires, it was basically wires. That little indicator light on the far right-hand side of the amp, if it's not cut off on your screen, some screens it might be. I'll bring it over just a little, just in case it is. you know, you would unscrew that and you would physically replace the bulb. It wasn't like an LED. All right. This is analog. There were wires soldered to those inputs and switches. Right. If those switches started getting staticky and stuff, you'd like spray them with like a contact spray or replace them. And there were tubes in there and you'd replace the tube. Right. And there were these two big, like I think there were 12-inch speakers in there. And the reverb thing it was caused by some kind of spring or something, some weird kind of spring box, you know, technology. But think of all the great music that came out of analog and the studios that were recording using tape, right? You know, on these boards. You know, you go through the march of time. You know, and some people look back at certain albums and they say, you know, that thing is a classic. And it you know, and it could be anybody. You know, it doesn't matter what your interest is. So you could be like someone who goes, say, well, listen to Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album. That thing is like, you know, yeah, it was recorded like, excuse me, analog, right? You know, someone else might say, well, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts, yeah, analog, right? With like these kinds of amps and stuff. On tape, right? Or like I showed Todd Rundgren, like who was basically doing some of that stuff himself. You know, most like I think a Wizard of True Star album, Todd Rundgren, I think he did that in his home studio himself. I think, but if he was at another studio, he still did it all himself. And you could go anywhere, and then you could go back further. You could get into some certain Motown sounds and, you know, some roots rock, roots R&B. You know, I mean, even some of Elvis stuff that was recorded, you know, Memphis, you know, I mean, man, they just did that stuff live. And now let's go back even further now. Before this, we're talking the rock era and stuff. And let's go back to Capitol Records building. That's that big circular building in Hollywood and Vine, right, out in L.A. And, you know, the studio in there, which one of the secrets they had was there was this hole through the floor and the sound used to go down through this hole. And that's how they got this, like, bigger, weird sound in early Sinatra records. That was like kind of a secret, you know, or other Capitol recordings. But, you know, they would go in there for a session and they basically were playing live. You know, they were doing takes. Kind of like, that's how I do my music now. That's what I do. I just do, you know, and I usually I'm just a one take, right? You know, I don't get into like, because I want it to be, it's like recorded live. It's like I say, my books, you know, you're going to find some mistakes in there, like a typo I made accidentally or something, you know. So what? It's real. It's authentic, you know. But yeah, so you go back to the 30s or the 40s, you know, and into the 50s, and we're talking real analog. And there were some producers and engineers back then that, you know, the amount of wires, if you would see what these studios look like, you know, and how all this stuff was, how they did this. And, you know, and then it's the march of time. And then you get up through rock, you know, and into disco, and then the 80s and video, and, Even early video was real primitive. You know, I think I have an old video camera. I mean, they were. Here's an old video camera, an old Sony. Look at all the stuff on there. Look. See that? Look at all that stuff. You see the inputs, audio inputs for the mic and stuff. And I don't know if you can see this lens. This is like a museum piece, really. Because I have videos from the South Pole and the North Pole and the Himalayas that were recorded on that. Think about that. That thing's been to the South Pole, the Himalayas, and the North Pole. But, you know, those are giant cameras, you know. Now new Apple iPhone has stuff on it. And that was an expensive camera. So that was 720 was the width of that. That was the best you could get out of that, 720. Like, so 720 by 480, I think, or something like that. 720 by 360. No, 720 by 480, I don't know. Something like that. And I have all these tapes and stuff that I just haven't had time to go through. Like, you can't imagine the footage I have. I mean, I could create an incredible documentary about all these expeditions and stuff, but it's like time. You know, the time. So, you know, it's like, I don't know, at some point, if I were still living out in LA, you know, there'd be people I could, like, you know, get to, you know, involved with it or whatever. But where I am here, there's nobody. And then half these things, these computers, I mean, I do have hopefully it would still work. I did buy about 2 years ago a adapter that would take those RCA audio videos and put them in through into a modern computer, so to speak, through a USB port or something like that. I think it's USB. But it's been something in the back of my mind, but you just don't have the time. But what I'm trying to get at is that even then, that's how people were making videos. You know, so you take that camera, put it on top of a tripod with the mics coming out of it, stereo, this, that, the other, and it's like, looks, you know, it's like it's the same thing you'd see in a movie from that era, a TV production type of thing. And the point was, there were TV shows and there were movies, you know. You know, it's like I gave some stuff away over the years. I had a couple of 16 millimeter film cameras and stuff like that, and a lot of film equipment, film equipment. But, you know, these great movies, you know, 2001: A Space Odyssey and, you know, Apocalypse Now and, you know, people into The Godfather or whatever. I mean, these movies were made in the 60s. You know, in the 80s, all these music videos. And like I'm saying, you know, some of these classic sounds from the 40s, 1940s Capitol Records, you know, recordings. And then music all straight through into the 70s and 80s. And, you know, and then digital came along later. Right? And then you had digital and CDs and the beginnings of that. You know, MP3 was originally a compression used in digital video, right? That they realized that they could use that as a separate file. That's how the MP3 thing came along. And now it's like, well, there's all kinds of stuff, AAC and, you know, just ridiculous. So, you know, what I'm getting at is that we were able to produce more with less, or at the very least, the same amount of stuff. You know, you could argue, you know, someone could argue, but I mean, I don't think they have a viable argument. I think when you listen to certain Capitol Records recordings, it's hard to take another recording and put it side by side today and say it's as good, right? It's the same as like albums like I say, if you're, I'm not a big Dark Side of the Moon person necessarily, but I mean, if you would, that is like a great, well, a fantastically produced album. And so, and you take Dark Side of the Moon and you put that aside of something else, you know, and it's like, at the very least, you have to agree, you know, I'd say it would be superior, but I mean, at the very least, you would have to say it would be comparable to anything produced today. And it's the same with looking at like some of the, like a film like 2001, Kubrick film, or Coppola, or, you know, Scorsese, or some of these people, Houston, I mean, even, you know, whatever, even, so the classic Orson Welles, you know, you have to still, you go like, you know, these filmmakers, I mean, you could go way back to, you know, the 20s and, you know, and look at Bugsby Berkeley's, you know, getting these girls to, you know, having the camera high above, and, you know, all this goofy nonsense they used to do. But what the thing about it is, you know, this bloatware, this idea of constantly just upgrading and making a device outdated for the sake of selling a new device is completely out of control. I mean, the word planned obsolescence has been around for a long, long time. It's an old word, you know, that they used because companies wanted to sell. They didn't want to sell you one thing that lasted forever. It's like the old classic round-cornered Frigidaire, refrigerator. You know, those things were still found in people's houses. I had one in an apartment I rented in the 90s, and that thing was, you know, from the 60s, and it still frickin' worked. And it's the same as this here. Right? It's a dial phone, and it still frickin' works. So if you're in a house and you have a phone, you know, you have a phone house, you know, what they call, you know, a line, you know, a house line, you know, and that thing's sitting somewhere, or people have a wall phone in their kitchen or something. They might have, that same phone lasted, you know, 60 years or 50 years. Well, the companies, you know, it's like, oh, man, we can't just sell one phone to one person. You know, we'll be out of business. And it's the same with cars. You know, cars used to last long. There were certain planned obsolescent parts in them that would go, so they would get the repair business. I mean, this is the early days of the corporatocracy thinking type of stuff. But then, it just started to, everything started to speed up. The planned obsolescence started to speed up where it was almost not even planned obsolescence. It was just, they were just selling garbage. They were just selling stuff that was going to, fall apart. Junk. And if it wasn't going to fall apart, like I say, I'm still using the G5. So it's built to last. But then they created things, software means to make it obsolete. Like there's no reason why, in other words, everything works on there. But they would do things like if you put it on the internet, they wouldn't make its mail. They would change the mail server so that it wouldn't recognize the mail on there. Like the first thing they did was they got rid of internet. Like the browser wouldn't function. It would say, this browser, you need to upgrade to such and such a browser. You've seen that, right? So anybody over a certain age, over 25 has probably seen that. You need to upgrade to one of the following browsers in order to view this page or to do this thing. And it's like, and that's how they did it, because they knew it was the internet age, and if without email and a browser, or a browser at least, you could get rid of the email because you could check your email through a browser, right? So they basically made it so they wouldn't allow that browser to function. And so in effect, this computer that you paid $1,000 for, maybe, right? This computer and monitor, no longer, you would have to buy a new computer. And guys like me go, well, fuck that. So I had this computer that I'm talking to you from, which is fairly modern, but they're trying to, and that's what the whole purpose of this rather lengthy thing, which is about to come to an end, which started with this Logic Pro bullshit, is that I decided, well, no, I'm going to keep the G5 because I paid for Photoshop and I paid for InDesign, I paid for Illustrator, I paid for Freehand. I like that version of iMovie. I like it that it has QuickTime. It has iDVD on it and a DVD drive. I could burn a DVD, right? The only thing I can't do, I have Clara's homepage, I could build a website. The only thing I can't do on that computer is go on the internet, right? Because the browser and mail don't work. So I'll do those other things on that one. Now this computer, they want to kill this one off for no known reason. Look at me. I'm coming to you. I've got this ridiculous set. I've got all this crazy functional things that I can do, right? And, and I'm feeding in, all of this.
Good morning.
Wake up and smell the coffee. Well, anyway, that was like just kind of a babble, but, that's what a podcast is. And it's just an idea that it's totally unnecessary. Because if you were able to do it in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, there's no reason why you can't do it today and why you have to buy a new machine. And if I was able to, right, do certain things with this iPhone, which isn't really that old, but it's old enough that they won't that it's not acceptable to have the new operating system on it, which makes it obsolete, okay, in their mind. And I'm not going to buy a new iPhone, and this one they totally turned into a brick. Like this one, I can't even charge. And the battery's fine. I had it working, but what they did, they've done something so that when you plug it in, it says it has to reinstall the software, but that software link, like wherever it's supposedly connecting to, they've discontinued it. It's a it doesn't exist. So it just sits there. You can have it connected all day long and it never goes, the bar never moves. So they're saying, no, that is over. You can't use that. Sorry. It's starting to become daylight. It's time for me to end this show. Anyway, that's just, it's an interesting thing, it's sad. It's just, but, what can I say? It's reality, and there's nothing we can do about it. But the hell if I'm going to spend another couple of grand on a computer, I love this new M1 Max chips, M1 Pro chips. They're putting into the Max. They're like super things. I mean, they're fantastic. But to get a device that I would want to use, it would cost me like $5 or $10 grand to have the system I'd want. I'm not going to do it. Well, I don't have $5 or $10 grand to waste on it. Anyway, that's that. Thanks for watching, man. Appreciate it. Get yourself a Freedom is Fun shirt or a Then What or You Don't Know What You Don't Know, or get the book Then What in print. Winter's coming in close. Get that great solar stuff. There's going to be power outages and stuff like that. You'll be glad you got it. Anyway, that's that. Take care.